This is CBC Vancouver News.
A lot of kids didn't go home, and we're still trying to find out who these kids are that are missing.
A First Nation in north central BC says potential unmarked graves have been identified on the grounds of a former residential school. It comes after nearly 2 years of surveying the area. And
we need to pay attention to these increases, and we need to invest accordingly.
as we get ready to mark World AIDS Day tomorrow, experts are sounding the alarm over a significant uptick in HIV infections in Canada. What more needs to be done? Also,
I'm gonna keep it close and hold it forever.
creating picture-perfect memories. How Christmas portraits are bringing a smile to the faces of those who live in Vancouver's downtown east side. Hello, thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Janella Hamilton. A First Nation in north central BC says it has discovered several potential unmarked graves at the site of a residential school following the use of ground-penetrating radar. The Layoffs First Nation announced the preliminary findings this afternoon. As Kimberly Davidson reports, it comes after nearly 2 years of surveying the area. And a warning, this story contains details that may be distressing for some viewers.
On Orange Shirt Day, residential school survivors gathered here at the former Lejac Indian residential school site. The institution, about 140 kilometers west of Prince George, was opened between 1922 and 1976. During that time, the nation estimates about 7,850 Indigenous children were forced to attend.
The truth needs to be told about what happened in these schools. A lot of kids didn't go home, and we're still trying to find out who these kids are that are missing and where they belong.
It's no secret there is a cemetery on the former school grounds. The institution made national headlines in the late 1930s when 4 boys between the ages of 7 and 9 were found frozen to death after they ran away.
They got to the mouth of the Matey River, and the river wasn't frozen over, so they couldn't cross the river. So they turned around, walked back towards Beaumont Park, and 4 of them froze that night.
The Layoffs First Nation began geophysical surveys last winter in areas of interest identified by survivors. The preliminary findings were announced at a news conference Saturday.
We did noted potential grave type features in several zones. We identified the former cemetery where graves had been removed, but numbers didn't match, and there might be a possibility that the graves are still present in the former cemetery.
BC's Minister of Indigenous Relations and Reconciliation responded to the news with a written statement. I offer my deepest condolences to those families and communities who lost their loved ones. Layoffs has my full support as they work to honor survivors, address these historical injustices, and engage in efforts toward healing and cultural revitalization. The First Nation says findings will be shared with the community as information becomes available, and a guiding team of survivors and intergenerational survivors is determining how to manage the former school site and the next steps. Kimberly Davidson, CBC News, Kelowna.
This coverage can be upsetting and invite painful feelings or memories. If you or someone you care about is looking for support, you can reach the National Residential School Crisis Line at 1-866-925-4419. It operates 24 hours a day and is available for survivors, intergenerational survivors, and their loved ones. Members of BC's Matey Nation voted today to leave the Matey National Council effective immediately. The group's president says the governance structure of the National Council is no longer equitable, and the decision to leave came after careful consideration and deliberation by its elected board of directors and community leaders.
And at this time, the other governing members had more votes than BC, and they weren't willing to give up any of their voting delicacy to BC to be able to make it more equitable for us to stay and for us to be able to be involved in a structure like that. We need to have an equal voice. Our people need to be heard equally as well as every other Métis citizen in this country.
The vote was held virtually during the BC Group's Governance Assembly and follows similar moves by Métis groups in Manitoba and Saskatchewan. In a statement to CBC News, the Métis National Council says Métis Nation BC's concerns regarding equity were being addressed through recent reforms endorsed by governing members. These efforts include unanimous resolutions for further governance modernization. The federal government has signed a treaty recognizing the Manitoba Métis Federation. It establishes the federation as the government of the Red River Métis, and it's the first modern Métis treaty in Canada. The ceremony was in Winnipeg. The copies of the treaty were bound in Métis beadwork. Federation President David Chartrand and Canada's Crown Indigenous Relations Minister applied their signatures. Details around specific rights remain to be negotiated. The treaty must now be passed as a bill in Parliament. Vancouver is getting ready to host the 2026 World Cup. Officials say during preparations, 2 Vancouver parks will be closed to the public and will be used as a training facility for teams. Those parks are Killarney Park and Memorial South Park.
I think one of the best things that they receive for the site in particular, there's millions of dollars being invested in the park upgrades here as part of the project. The challenge is that the park does have to be closed for an extended period to make these things happen. But there is a huge benefit to the park in the long term, some very short-term difficulty for folks who lose access, and we're not losing sight of that, and we're here today to share that information.
Max says the parks will be closed starting in January for about 18 months to 2 years. At Memorial Park South, the large green space and pedestrian walkway will be closed for the construction of locker rooms and a press box, among other upgrades. Regular users of the park are opposing the closures and are asking the city to find an alternative.
It's a place where seniors go, a place where kids learn to ride their bikes. This is the fall, and hundreds of people use our park every day. How could they take the access away from our park?
I did not enjoy how late this consultation came in the process. It was very difficult to feel like I had any input in a process that's already been done.
The FIFA committee announced the construction work last July, and since then, several citizens have criticized the lack of prior public consultation. Tomorrow is World AIDS Day, and while experts say substantial progress has been made in fighting HIV and AIDS globally, in Canada, rates are trending up. New data shows a significant jump in diagnoses between 2022 and 2023. As Maurice Katz reports, advocacy groups in BC are urging the federal government to take action now.
It's quite emotional to see numbers increasing, particularly after years of decline.
Fewer people are being diagnosed with and dying of HIV and AIDS around the world. But in Canada, while deaths are down, infections are on the rise. In 2023, there were more than 2,400 new diagnoses of HIV, a 35% increase compared to the year before.
We should be alarmed. We should be both ashamed and urging our federal government and our provincial governments to do what British Columbia has done so that we can free our country of the curse that HIV has been.
In BC, both HIV treatment and prevention medication is free, which Montana says is the reason for the province's success against the disease. But he says other provinces are falling behind.
In the rest of Canada, the eligibility for coverage is very uneven. And as we have shown before, it's critical that these medicines and everything else related to HIV care be made available free and without barriers.
It's also discouraging to see that in a country as wealthy as Canada, with the kind of healthcare system we have, the kind of tools we have, yet people are still falling through the cracks.
Moores' organization is among 20 others across Canada calling for more funding from the federal government, including $50 million each year to improve access to HIV treatment and care. He says Canada's HIV response is underfunded and has not seen an increase in more than a decade.
Complacency is not going to end HIV. Really, we need to continue to be vigilant, we need to pay attention to these increases, and we need to invest accordingly to ensure that people get the tools they need.
Vancouver's Dr. Peter Centre is a healthcare facility in the West End that began as a place where people with AIDS could receive compassionate care. The CEO says while AIDS treatment has improved, especially in Vancouver, the fight against the disease is far from over.
Normally now what we see in Vancouver, if someone is developing illness from HIV, it's usually because of a lot of other factors as well. They may have mental illness, they may have homelessness, they may have a substance use issue.
These experts worry Canada will not meet targets set by the United Nations to end HIV as a public health threat by 2030. Maurice Katz, CBC News, Vancouver.
It's become a Christmas tradition in Vancouver's downtown east side. Photographers, makeup artists, and dozens of volunteers coming together to create picture-perfect memories. As Shoria Chethri reports, it's all part of a global movement, giving those who can't afford professional photos a reason to smile.
She's never going to be this small ever again. She's only going to get bigger. So now I have something to look back on.
It's a special day for Kaylee Robertson and her baby daughter. Robertson, who is in a recovery program for mothers, says this moment is more than just a picture.
I had a little moment where I was crying because I wish that I got to have that, but I'm glad I kind of got a second chance to be get to enjoy it.
Like Robertson, dozens gathered at the Union Gospel Mission for a makeover and professional portraits, an annual event now deeply rooted in the community.
People love smiling, people love the gift of Christmas, and when you don't have a lot or when you're going through a really tough circumstance, it can be really hard to smile. So this event gives people reasons to smile.
She says the event is part of the global initiative Help Portrait and relies on the tireless work of volunteers.
All of the professional hair and makeup artists, all of the people helping print photos are all doing this on their own time because they care.
A small army picking up cameras and brushes, some who have been part of this tradition for years.
Started in 2009. I was answering a job post for volunteers, and I came in and just wanted to give back.
Others are new to the experience.
This is my second opportunity for volunteerism and my first time applying on a gentleman. But it's all the theories the same, right? And it's just about bringing joy to people. It's just about having a great time and making people feel uplifted and awesome.
And Peter Ramirez is feeling just that.
I'd like to say I'm a movie star, but not yet.
Ramirez slowly transformed while chatting with the stylist. He made sure he looked picture perfect, donned a hat, struck a few poses, snapped his photos, and became a star. He says he's going to make Christmas cards out of his photos and send it to his loved ones. Others, like Robertson, say they are going to hang on to theirs.
She's so beautiful.
Shoria Chethri, CBC News, Vancouver.
A Vancouver-based charity held its first ever holiday pop-up market last night. The market aims to support low-income entrepreneurs facing work and social barriers. Take a look.
Hi, I'm Lauren.
And I'm Vivian.
Welcome to the first annual Make Change Market.
Empower is a Vancouver-based charity that empowers low-income individuals to overcome barriers through entrepreneurship.
So it's the first ever annual Make Change Market, and when we started tonight at 6 p.m. we had a lineup down the block. We had 55 people in, and it's about 7 o'clock now, and we've had 200 people! Tonight we have 17 entrepreneurs. Some of them are marketing for the very first time, so it's super special. There's lots of products. For example, these earrings I got tonight.
We kind of trained the entrepreneurs for 2 months on the basics of how to market vendor. So, how do you talk to your customers? How do you make pricing lists?
They're looking pretty busy, Vivian, so let's go meet some entrepreneurs. How's the market been for you so so far?
Very well. Welcome to my studio. A lot of my art is about empowerment. I am an advocate against violence against women. And this one, it glows in the dark. This one, it talks about the connection between spirit, mind, and body. And it is about shining without fear, no matter what happens. Keep glowing and keep going and keep being yourself. And what Employer Empower has helped me is to learn how to monetize my art and how to make it an actual business, not just doing it for the experience, but actually living from it. One of the members of Employer Empower was like, make your art a spectacle. And I'm like, I'm good at that, so I made it a spectacle, literally. I got a lot more attention than I expected.
I didn't know where to start, so honestly they helped me to gain the knowledge, the basis, and feel supported. I didn't have really family or friends here, but they really guide me and I feel like a family.
I think for a lot of our entrepreneurs, when they graduate our 10 weeks business skills training program, the next question is, where can I connect with people and make sales? So we thought a holiday pop-up market would be perfect. This is the place to be. It's definitely heartwarming to see the line that we had outside. They've been working really, really hard just to get their products in line. I'm incredibly proud of the whole team, our volunteers and our entrepreneurs, and we can't wait to be back next year.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau dines with President-elect Donald Trump in Florida to chew over the recent U.S. tariff threat against Canada. We'll tell you how it went and what remains at stake after the break. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has returned to Canada after a whirlwind trip to Florida, where he met with President-elect Donald Trump. The surprise meeting came days after Trump threatened a 25% tariff on Canadian imported goods in a social media post. Rafi Boudjikanian tells us how it went and what remains at stake.
Prime Minister, was it a productive meeting with President-elect?
Journalists catching up with Justin Trudeau as he left his Florida hotel Saturday morning.
It was an excellent conversation. How are you talking about your relationship with Donald Trump?
And one Canadian sources say Trudeau pushed to have his government asking for this meeting with the U.S. president-elect after Donald Trump posted earlier this week on social media that he would impose 25% tariffs on Canadian and Mexican goods as soon as he returns to office, citing illegal migration and fentanyl smuggling into the U.S. from the two countries. Political observers say the pressure on Trudeau was mounting.
I mean, Trump is not yet the president. We've still got some time, but he's announced that he intends to go through with his 25% tariff.
The Prime Minister brought up that threat before he traveled south of the border.
Our responsibility is to point out that in this way, he would be actually not just harming Canadians who work so well with the United States, he'd actually be raising prices for American citizens as well.
The question now whether that message will make a difference.
I think it was successful in that it gave the Prime Minister an opportunity to talk to President Trump about the work that we're doing at the border. But it was we think, very constructive in terms of setting a relationship that had existed before on a very positive track for January.
Former Canadian diplomat says that's a tall order.
With Trump, I think you have to be big and bold. So why don't we manage the border together? We've been talking about this since really the late 90s. Why not go in with the idea of a joint border authority? It would be make it much better for both of us, so we know what's going on.
For now, Canada did tell Trump that it would be increasing helicopter surveillance at the border and brought up a currently mothballed pipeline expansion from Alberta to Montana. As for Trump, he posted on social media that fair trade deals cannot jeopardize American workers and said that Trudeau promised to work with him to end fentanyl smuggling. Trump also said he'll keep bringing up cross-border issues even before he gets into office. Rafi Boudjikanian, CBC News, Ottawa.
The union representing thousands of Canada Post workers has filed an unfair labour practice complaint with the Canada Industrial Relations Board. It comes after the Crown Corporation's decision to temporarily lay off some workers. More than 55,000 employees have been on strike for 2 weeks over wages and working conditions. CBC's Albert Delatala has the latest.
There are some strong words from the union that represents Canada Post workers in a bulletin filed explaining why they filed that unfair labour practice complaint with the Canada Industrial Relations Board. The grievance follows a move by Canada Post to lay off some of its striking workers. Here's what the Canadian Union of Postal Workers said in a statement. They said, quote, "We feel this unprecedented move on the part of Canada Post is a clear intimidation tactic in violation of the Canada Labour Code. It goes on to say that the layoffs are an attack on the fundamental right to strike enshrined in the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms." This week, Canada Post confirmed it's laying off some of its more than 55,000 workers who have been striking for about 2 weeks over wages and working conditions. It said they were temporary, but didn't say how many people were being laid off. The union, meanwhile, says that Canada Post didn't consult them before laying off those members. They're calling on the Labour Board to have Canada Post provide more details about those layoffs and to, in fact, rescind the layoffs. A spokesperson for Canada Post confirms that it has received that complaint and is reviewing it, and they deny that there has been any violation of the Labour Code. Albert Delatala, CBC News, Toronto.
This was the Eagle Chair on Cypress Mountain earlier today. A lot of snow up on those mountain tops, but it's all sunshine in the days ahead for most of the province. I'll have your full forecast next. All right, it is time now to take a look at your full forecast. Let's begin with a quick peek at temperatures around the province tonight. Minus 33 in Dease Lake, minus 31 in Fort St. John. So much cooler up in those areas. Over in Kelowna, 0 overnight, and on the island, 3 in Victoria. Similar conditions in Tofino for tomorrow. Minus 23 in Fort St. John with a little snow in store. Minus 2 in Prince George. Again, those snow flurries. A little more precipitation in Williams Lake with a high of 2 for tomorrow. Oh, minus 2, pardon me. Kamloops is going to see a high of 2 tomorrow. And Kelowna, you're going to have a little more sun and clouds with a high of 2 as well. On the island, Victoria and Tofino, both mix of sun and clouds and a high of 9. In Metro Vancouver, similar conditions with a high of 7 for our Sunday. That is going to turn into a lot of sunshine for us on Monday and Tuesday before the rain returns on Wednesday. That is your late news for Saturday, November 30th. Thanks so much for joining us tonight. For news on the go at any hour, you can always head to our website at cbc.ca/bc. Good night.